The WNBA had eagerly anticipated Caitlin Clark's arrival. The hype was real. Clark was a generational talent. She had dominated the college game. Her dazzling passes and fearless shooting had captivated fans. The Indiana Fever, a franchise searching for a spark, had landed the coveted #1 pick. Clark was expected to usher in a new era in Indiana. She was the face of the future. Clark didn't disappoint. From the opening tip-off of her rookie season, she lived up to the hype. She orchestrated the Fever's offense with a veteran's poise. Her no-look passes became must-see TV. Opponents struggled to contain her scoring prowess. Clark was everything the WNBA had hoped for and more. She was a star in the making, but a disturbing trend began to emerge. As Clark's star rose, so did the physicality she faced on the court. Defenders played her aggressively, some would say too aggressively, and the referees, they seemed to be letting things go, a lot of things. What started as whispers of unfair officiating soon grew into a chorus of concern. The WNBA had a problem on its hands, a problem that threatened to overshadow the brilliance of its brightest young star. The WNBA is a physical league, always has been, but what Caitlin Clark experienced seemed different. Defenders were relentless. They bodied her up, they hand-checked her, they rode her hip on drives to the basket. The contact was constant, and often, it was excessive. Clark, to her credit, played through it. She never backed down, she never complained. But the lack of calls from the officials was becoming impossible to ignore. It was as if there was a different rule book for Caitlin Clark, one where fouls simply didn't exist. The whispers started small. Fans on social media pointed out the disparity in officiating. Some wondered if Clark's style of play, her flashy handles and quick release were somehow working against her. Were the refs subconsciously expecting her to avoid contact? Were they less likely to blow the whistle because she made it look so effortless? Whatever the reason, the officiating was becoming a major talking point, and it was starting to cast a shadow over Clark's rookie season. The eye test was bad enough, but the statistics painted an even more damning picture. Caitlin Clark, despite being one of the most fouled players in the league, was barely getting to the free throw line. The numbers were simply staggering. Consider this. Clark, a player who drove to the basket with reckless abandon, averaged a paltry 3.7 free throw attempts per game. To put that in perspective, other rookies, players who handled the ball far less, were getting to the line twice as often. Something wasn't adding up. Then, there were the flagrant fouls. Clark drew a disproportionate amount of hard contact. Contact that often left her sprawled on the floor. Yet, she was rarely afforded the protection of a flagrant foul call. In fact, a whopping 17% of all flagrant fouls called in the entire league were on plays involving Caitlin Clark, and a staggering 80% of those fouls were committed by players from a single team, the Chicago Sky. The numbers didn't lie. Caitlin Clark was being officiated differently, and it was time for the WNBA to take notice. The simmering controversy surrounding the officiating of Caitlin Clark reached a boiling point in late September. 3 games in particular, all against the Chicago Sky, brought the issue to the forefront of the WNBA conversation. On September 22, Clark took a hard shot to the face from Sky guard Dejounte Carrington. The replay showed clear contact. Clark's head snapped back, but the whistle remained silent. No foul was called. 2 days later it happened again. This time it was Sky forward DeWanna Bonner who made contact with Clark on a 3-point attempt. Again, the replay was damning, but again, no whistle. The no call was so egregious that even ESPN commentators expressed their disbelief on air. The very next night, the Sky seemed to make a mockery of the situation. Guard Marina Mabry clearly fouled Clark on a drive to the basket. This time, instead of arguing the call, Mabry simply smiled and winked at the nearest official. The message was clear: we can get away with this. These 3 games, played on consecutive nights, sent shockwaves through the WNBA. The league, already facing criticism for its handling of the situation, was now under intense scrutiny. The integrity of the game was in question. The Clark effect impact on performance and psyche. The constant beating was taking its toll on Caitlin Clark. The lack of calls, the feeling that she wasn't being protected was starting to wear her down. It was evident in her play. The normally fearless rookie was shying away from contact. Her drives to the basket became less frequent, her passes less crisp. The mental strain was even more concerning. Clark, who had always played with a joy and exuberance that was infectious, seemed to be losing her spark. The smile that had once been a permanent fixture on her face was now a rarity. The physical toll was one thing, but the mental toll was far more insidious. the situation was also having a chilling effect on the entire league. Defenders, emboldened by the lack of calls, were becoming even more physical with Clark. It was as if they knew they could get away with it. And why wouldn't they? The officials had shown a willingness to let them play. The WNBA had created a monster and it was threatening to devour its most prized asset. A league on trial, the WNBA's integrity in question. The Caitlin Clark officiating controversy was about more than just one player. It struck at the very heart of the WNBA's integrity. The league, which had always prided itself on fairness and equality, was now facing accusations of bias and preferential treatment. The optics were terrible. Here was the league's brightest young star, a generational talent who was single-handedly bringing in new fans, being treated differently than her peers. The message was clear: not all players are created equal in the WNBA. The league's silence on the matter only made things worse. Commissioner Kathy Engelbert, who had been vocal on other issues, remained conspicuously silent on the Clark situation. This lack of transparency fueled speculation and eroded trust in the league's leadership. The WNBA was at a crossroads. It could either address the issue head-on, acknowledge the problem, and take steps to fix it. Or it could continue to bury its head in the sand and risk alienating fans, players, and sponsors. The future of the league hung in the balance. A call for action, fans, analysts, and the need for reform. The outcry for change was deafening. Fans took to social media, using the hashtag #ProtectCaitlin Clark to voice their displeasure. Analysts, including myself, called out the league for its inaction. Even celebrities like Dave Portnoy, who had never shown much interest in the WNBA before, weighed in on the situation, demanding accountability from the league. The consensus was clear: something had to be done. Some argued for a more stringent application of the rules. Others suggested adopting a superstar call similar to what exists in the NBA, where certain players, because of their star power and impact on the game, are afforded a greater level of protection by the officials. The league, facing mounting pressure, could no longer afford to ignore the issue. It had to act, and it had to act swiftly. The credibility of the WNBA, a league that had fought tooth and nail for recognition and respect, was on the line. The superstar conundrum: protecting the game's assets. The idea of a superstar call is a controversial one. Critics argue that it creates an uneven playing field, giving certain players an unfair advantage. But proponents, myself included, believe that it's necessary to protect the game's most valuable assets. The reality is that stars like Caitlin Clark are the lifeblood of the WNBA. They drive ticket sales, merchandise sales, and television ratings. They bring in new fans and keep old fans coming back for more. Losing them to injury, or worse, disillusionment, would be a devastating blow to the league. The WNBA needs to find a way to protect its stars without compromising the integrity of the game. It's a delicate balance, but one that must be struck. The future of the league may depend on it. The future of the WNBA crossroads for the league. The Caitlin Clark officiating controversy was a watershed moment for the WNBA. It exposed a flaw in the league's system, a flaw that threatened to undermine its credibility and jeopardize its future. The league's response to this crisis will be telling. Will it acknowledge the problem and take meaningful steps to address it? Or will it continue to operate in a state of denial, hoping that the problem will simply go away on its own? The future of the WNBA, a league that has overcome countless obstacles to get to this point, may hinge on the answer to that question. The eyes of the basketball world are watching. The time for action is now.